Hello my friends, it is Friday. Welcome back. Today I will tell you the truth, the painful truth. It touches upon the front line. See, when I always talk about the Russian economy, I tell you the refineries Ukraine has struck deep inside Russia. I tell you how bad the Russian economy is doing, which is true, but I haven't given so much time about different frontal cities that in the next 6 months, according to my estimates, might fall to Russia. And today we're going to speak the truth about that. So if you really don't want to hear about that, there are other channels who don't talk about that. But in this video, I will. Before we go, I noticed that about half of you are not subscribed. So please do that. Press the subscribe button to be notified when I upload next. And even before we go, I'll let you know there's two segments in this video. First of all, what happened inside Russia. This includes the sanctions of both US and European Union. And secondly, the front line, the a little bit painful topic, which I will say everything that needs to be said about it. But we begin with the good news and we'll work our way up to the bad news, but the good news first. Trump finally sanctioned Russia. What does it mean and which countries does it connect to? And it's not only Russia, it is also China and India who hold the key for Russian revenues of oil and gas exports. I have a BBC article for you which summons it pretty great. The link is in the description below. Trump finally sanctioned two of the biggest Russian oil exporters, which is Lukoil and Rosneft. Rosneft alone, the company, is responsible for about 6% of the entire global oil flow yearly. Between them, the two companies corporate export 3.1 million barrels of oil per day. These are first and very significant and very painful sanctions from the United States to Russia. Now, they will not end the war in one day, but they will hurt Russia and Putin's war machine, Putin's revenue streams real bad. And they do connect to China and India because the European Union is not the biggest importer of Russian oil anymore. It's China and India. And they did that up until now unobstructed. But now that the United States, the biggest and most powerful economy, has sanctioned these two entities, China and India also might think twice. For example, India will significantly reduce its imports of crude oil from Russia due to US and European sanctions. Reliance Industries Limited, India's largest buyer of Russian oil, plans to sharply reduce or completely halt crude oil imports from Moscow. Different Indian importers reacted to these sanctions, US sanctions, very sharply, claiming that they, for now, will pause imports of Russian oil. Some companies will continue importing it, some will pause it, but it will immediately hit Putin's wallet. Russia will now seek negotiations with India to find ways around the sanctions, applying pressure and offering lucrative deals. The thing is, Russia already sells crude oil to India and China with a massive discount. Ural's crude oil is already a lot cheaper than Brent crude oil, but Russia sells it to China and India even cheaper than the international Ural's crude oil price. So now that US sanctions these two Russian biggest exporters, India will halt and China also will halt seaborne crude imports from Russia. Now Russia again needs to make the oil even more lucrative and more cheaper, lessening their revenue. So either way it goes, if India will re-accept Russian oil because it becomes so cheap, Russia loses money either way. If India doesn't import or if they import with even cheaper price, it's hit to the Russian wallet, whichever way it goes. Here is a chart for you of India's oil imports. You can see about half of them are made up of Rosneft and Lukoil products. These two are now under sanctions. You can see that Russia is about to lose a major client. But it's not only India. China state oil majors suspend Russian oil buys due to sanctions. With China, there's a specific detail. They suspend seaborne oil, not pipeline oil. Seaborne oil makes up smaller part of Chinese oil imports from Russia. Pipeline oil makes up a bigger part. But even if they only suspend seaborne oil imports, it's still very painful for Russia because any revenue loss right now really hits them. Of course, when I talk about China and India, these both suspensions of oil imports are temporary. Both countries are looking for cheaper options that Russia will now try to give them. They're all looking for schemes to import Russian oil without falling under the Western sanctions, for example, mixing the oil in third countries and then importing it as not Russian oil. All these schemes, they will take time, but for now, both of these countries will pause Russian imports in smaller or bigger amounts. India with a bigger amount pause, China with a smaller amount pause only for seaborne crude, not with the pipeline crude. Thing is, for now, Russia hurts. Time will tell if they will find new schemes or if Russia will make their oil so cheap that both countries will start importing again. But it's not only the United States who imposed these sanctions. European Union imposed the 19th packet of sanctions against Russia. This time they target the energy, third country banks, crypto, and Russian people responsible for abducting Ukrainian children. And again, some people might hear this, the 19th packet, it's not that serious, they always sanction Russia for 3 years and nothing has happened. They do. Every packet hurts Russia quite bad. I will bring you the summary of what was exactly banned and sanctioned. And finally, I'll bring you Putin's reaction. It's quite funny, actually. Ban on LNG supplies to the EU, and this will start from January 2027. Again, a lot of people's reaction is that why 27? It's 1.5 years away. Why not now? European Union is such a big entity, such a powerful entity, and such a big economic force that these things take time. It's not easy to make changes like that on such a grand scale from tomorrow. Not possible. A complete ban on all crypto service for Russian citizens. Restrictions on traveling for Russian diplomats. The list includes 117 more vessels from the Russian Shadow Fleet, banks in Kazakhstan and Belarus, as well as 4 companies associated with China's oil industry are sanctioned as well. And under these sanctions are also electronic toilets. Hey, don't ask me, all electronics, including children's bicycles, children's toys, everything that has a chip that could be used in a rocket is sanctioned now. But this includes electronic toilets. Yes, you heard correctly. And Putin specifically responded to that. I want to just share this moment with you. It's crazy. Once again, a new statement from the United States President, whether there will be a meeting with you or not, regarding the Ukrainian crisis. Almost simultaneously, the United States imposed sanctions against Russian oil companies. Today, the European Union has imposed another packet of sanctions, another packet of anti-Russian sanctions. Now even toilets, toys with motors, puzzles and tricycles are banned. How can you comment on all of this? So this guy has one question to Putin, and he wants the toilet response. And it's very much connected because in 2022 we had a massive bunch of videos of Russian soldiers stealing Ukrainian toilets. So it is a big deal because they don't really have toilets in majority of Russia. The fact that they banned the purchase of our toilets will cost them dearly. It seems to me that they would actually need them if they continue to proceed with the same policy towards the Russian Federation. Putin is implying that we need Russian toilets if we continue on this path. I don't think so. I don't agree with him on this. Alright, my friend, now for the painful comment, because the next section is the frontline section, and before that I would read you a viewer's comment which is critical of me and critical of pro-Ukrainian military bloggers for concealing the truth. Now, I have to say before that I am not concealing any truth from you, I just focused on other areas, because there are so many frontline channels who focus specifically on movements on the front. I don't really do that much. I'm focused on the macro picture, the Russian economy, European Union, United States macro picture. But I will read you this comment to show that I'm very open to criticism and I am for the truth. If there is a truth I have not mentioned, then I will do that now. Carcas456 comments, and I'll read you the entire thing. It's under the previous video. Artur, to be fair to your listeners, it will be perhaps advisable to inform them not only about Pokrovsk disaster, but to mention a few more directions where the situation is ranging from bad to catastrophic for Ukrainian forces at the same time. All of these are reported by Ukrainian channels and Telegram groups and deep state, so no secrets here. This last one means that if I sometimes say anything about the front, people go crazy yelling, don't share this information. I gotta say, this is public, this comment is public, everything is public. Number 1. Pokrovsk, you did mention it, is practically surrounded and Ukrainian troops are trying to escape the Cauldron. Number 2. Russians advance on Dnipro and Zaporizhia, or Dnipropetrovsk, we'll look at it later, direction from the east. You did mention it very briefly, but you failed to mention what Ukrainian channels scream about. Defense region on Pavlivka, Uspenivka, Nova Mikhailivka is pretty much doomed after the fall of Okhotniche. The reason why I mentioned these things very briefly is again that my channel has a different focus, more on Russian economy and the macro picture, but I'll, for the sake of truth, will do it. Number 3. Kucheriv Yar and Novoshakhove, where Ukrainian troops failed to cut off Russian offensive ears. This resulted now in Ukrainian counterattack forces trapped in Shakhova and risk being surrounded in another cauldron. We'll talk about the Kucheriv Yar because Russians just surrendered in that most northern pocket. So this point number 3 here is simply false and I cannot agree with it, but I will read it to you still. Number 4. Gleban Big Cauldron, south of the water reservoir. These Ukrainian troops are not even mentioned anymore as if they are already gone. Number 5. Russians advancing Konstantynyvka. Russians already entered the town's southern border. We will talk about this today, because indeed Russian DRGs, the small groups, were just eliminated close to city center, about 2 clicks from where the main Russian line goes. This is very far from where any map shows it. Number 6. Russians advancing Chandrikholova and moving towards the Izium. Number 7. The Kupiansk disaster for Ukrainian forces. Not even mentioned by you, while other Ukrainian observers scream about it. You correctly accuse some Ukrainian commanders of failing to recognize and report the reality on the front lines, while seemingly doing exactly the same mistake yourself. Again, the reason I don't mention all of these frontal areas one by one is that this is not my focus. There is a channel called Ukrainian Frontline Update, something like that, that does just that. Everyday detailed analysis of the front. It's not the focus of my channel. Russians certainly have problems on their own. Some idiot commanders, bureaucracy and false reporting on the front lines, poor air defense, etc. And you are very well reporting on these, while exaggerating a bit, but that's understandable. But don't fall into the trap of believing too much into my own propaganda. There is a reason I read this comment, is that there are truths in it, there are faults in it, but I want to open up this topic. There are some frontal areas I haven't talked about because it is not the focus of my channel. But today we will do it because it is the truth and it needs to be mentioned, and of course I will guide you to other channels who do it with great detail and much better than I do, so go and watch other frontal channels also. With this truth being said, I do want to thank 2 Buy Me a Coffee members who have stayed. We have only 2 new ones, so if you want to make that list longer and if you like what I do, sign up for Buy Me a Coffee. Robert Tkoms Randikod. Thank you, my friends. Before we go to the front lines, I will let you know about 2 deep strikes in Russia. See, this is the focus of my channel. Russian economy, deep strikes in Russia, the macro picture. And we begin with the chemical plant, military plant of Chelyabinsk in Russia, which was struck on 22nd of October. And first of all, again, since my channel does things with a humoristic touch, how do you say that? Through humor, then here is a Russian citizen reacting live to the Ukrainian strikes on the Chelyabinsk military plant. Let's watch it.
Да, вот в той туче только что вот так
He is remaking the explosions. And I think we all get the idea, he does it quite well. Now, 2 days later, we have the aftermath of this strike. The plant specifically was loaded with munitions. Why do we know this? Well, because the explosion was really big, and B, there were secondary explosions, and C, all around this explosion epicenter, there were fragments of artillery shells, meaning they had plenty of artillery shells on the location. Aftermath of the explosion of the Russian military plant near Chelyabinsk. Artillery shell fragments are visible throughout the area. 10 factory workers confirmed dead. 12 more missing, so the total number of casualties is likely 22. More often than not, Ukrainian strikes on these Russian factories don't involve this amount of casualties, but this one has a lot of casualties. And let's just take a look at the fireball for a moment. I will know for a fact that no Ukrainian drones who fly 1,000 kilometers carry enough explosions to make this fireball. This is Russian ammunition inside the factory igniting, and there were secondary explosions also indicating there were more ammunitions present than went up with the first fireball. Let's also look at the location. Specific location, I'll just zoom out for you slowly so we know where we are. See, that's the Chelyabinsk city. It's a pretty big city. That's the urban area of Kopisk, and right between Chelyabinsk and Kopisk there was this chemical factory, military factory, that's now blown to bits with ammunition fragments all over this epicenter. Second strike that happened actually yesterday, 23rd of October, was Ryazan oil refinery, which is one of Russia's largest oil refineries, period. One of largest, like top 3. A series of explosions hit Ryazan overnight, with drones targeting the local oil refinery and Diaghilevo airbase. So, Ryazan oil refinery plus Diaghilevo airbase. A massive blaze broke out near the catalytic cracking of hydrocracking unit, part of the refinery producing 12 to 13 million tons annually. Some sources say Beklo missile drones were used. Different sources I see claim that Ukrainians used drones plus domestically produced missiles to hit this oil refinery. I also want to show you the specific location on Google Maps, since Google Maps is so easy to use. You just put satellite and you can see everything. They don't hide it. But this is the entry building of the Ryazan oil company. I want to zoom out and show you how big it is. We have the city of Ryazan right next to it. And I want to compare it. See, all of this area here, you can see on the screen, is the oil refinery. I want to show you how big is this. See, Ryazan city is a big city, and the oil refinery is like 1/4 of it. Is only the oil refinery. 25% of the city size is the oil refinery. Now let's make a thought experiment. Imagine you don't know anything about oil refineries, or me, I don't know anything about oil refineries. Everything I do know is thanks to your comments. What would I strike if I zoom in on Google Maps? I will use Google Maps since everybody has it. I'll zoom in. This is the oil refinery. I want to take it out, and I'm a Ukrainian drone commander who sends in drones or missiles. What would I strike? With my limited understanding, I would search for towers. Big structures like this. I would send a few drones here. Let's search for other towers. See, this one looks important. This one. I would strike this. Let's search for one more unit. This unit here. And one more. This one here. Even if I miss target out of these 4 places I just found, 2 or 3. If I take out the catalyst tower, the hydrocracking unit, the oil refining tower itself, I'm doing a good job. Just as a thought experiment, you don't need to know much about refineries to be able to strike the heart of it, to take out the production capacity of it. And all of this massive area, let's take a random oil tank right here, whatever it is, you don't need to strike this. You don't need to strike these chimneys, these pipelines, nothing. You need to strike A, the pumping stations, and B, the cracking towers. By the way, the fuel shortage in Russia, it's not only Russia. There are countries, Russian allies, for example Mongolia and Kazakhstan, who import a massive amount of oil they have from Russia. Mongolia also has fuel lines and fuel shortage. We have this video. See, Russia banned all fuel products exports This means Mongolia suddenly doesn't get anything, and they used to get close to everything from Russia. Meaning, as a secondary effect of Ukrainian strikes, Mongolia has massive fuel lines. Why is this important is that if Russia doesn't export fuel products to them, it will be some other country who will, for example, China. So Russia will lose customers just for the fact that they're not able to supply enough for the demand in these countries. China will take the place. Rotating back a little bit to the refineries and what to strike, I have a very short summary for you. Using high-resolution satellite imagery, social media footage and government reports, we have verified more than 90 strikes between 2nd of August and 13th of October. About 2/3 targeted refineries, pumping stations, and pipeline control nodes deep inside Russia, meaning they did not target mostly fuel storage facilities, but as I mentioned, pumping stations and pipeline control nodes. They have a very specific list of targets they hunt. Repeated hits on sites such as Unecha and Zenzevatka suggest a target efforts to disable flow control points on major pipelines rather than destroy storage capacity. This gives you an information how Ukrainians differentiate targets. They have so many targets to pick from, they have chosen to take out pumping stations and flow control points. Alright, my friends, now we go to the front lines, and I'll begin with good news here, because, like the comment mentioned before, Kucheriv Yar, the Cauldron, it claimed that Ukrainians themselves are in a cauldron in this area, but we just got information yesterday that Kucheriv Yar, the most northern cauldron near Bakrovsk, has been eliminated. Russians have surrendered here, so this is one of the points I can just immediately push over. Today, the Ukrainian side reported the capture of Kucheriv Yar, which is this village right here, mostly destroyed, and the most northern Russian encirclement was called the Kucheriv Yar encirclement. And Ukrainians released a video showing soldiers of the 132nd Separate Reconnaissance Battalion raising a flag in the ruins of the village, as well as taking approximately 4 to 6 prisoners from an unknown Russian unit. Let's watch the video also, so we're all on the same page. This comes from the northmost encirclement of Kucheriv Yar. We see Ukraine's 132nd Recon Battalion raising the Ukrainian flag in Kucheriv Yar. And these are the Russian prisoners. Different sources claim it was 50 prisoners. I would be very careful with these numbers. They will be inflated so much in the social media. I would just believe what I see with my own eyes. It's like 10 to 15 prisoners I see on this video. So who were the Ukrainian units? And as the critical comment of me mentioned that there are no rotations, which is true. There are no rotations on the Ukrainian side because Ukrainian side has massive manpower shortages, so there's nobody to rotate the troops out. You do get the rotations if you are sent to other parts of the front, not to rest, but to fight other places where the fighting is maybe more quieter, not that dangerous. That's considered your rest. But in Kucheriv Yar, in the Bakrovsk area specifically, there was a rotation. I will read it to you. As for the Ukrainian side, around mid-September, a rotation took place in the area. And the elements of the 12th National Guards Brigade Azov, the 14th National Guards Brigade Red Kalina, and the 25th Assault Battalion, which were attacking in the Vilna area. I have to show you very fast. Right here, southwest of Kucheriv Yar, attacking in the Vilna area, were replaced by the 92nd Assault Brigade, supported by the 173rd Separate Territorial Defense Battalion. 92nd Assault Brigade, it's very important because you guys have donated to 3 different of my campaigns, which we gave a card to this brigade specifically. I have a hat from them, I have a medallion from them. So this specific brigade, if a miracle has happened and the car still has survived almost 2 years, this car is now in Bakrovsk. So let me draw points on a map for you. Again, other channels do it so much better. They have animations and everything. I just have this drawing tool. So how Kucheriv Yar was liberated is these forest strips from Vizela. South from Vizela, these forest strips. Ukrainians advanced through these forest strips and there's one here also, not through the open field, but through these forest strips into Kucheriv Yar, the northern part of Kucheriv Yar, started their assault. It's the second time they did that. They did that again about 1 month ago, and then it failed. Ukrainian assault failed. But now it didn't, and against this pressure, Russians started to surrender one by one, and then Ukrainians got a sign from that the enemy is breaking. They sent in more reinforcements, eliminating Russian presence in the village of Kucheriv Yar. Now, as you can see, south of Kucheriv Yar, there are still small Russian pockets, but the village itself is now liberated. This is where the good news ends on the front. We now go to the bad news. The bad news is, this is the encirclements here. We go a little bit east. We have the city of Konstantynyvka, which is, again, like Pokrovsk, almost surrounded by three sides. You see, you wouldn't say, looking at this map, that Russians are inside this city. The closest they are is Alexandra Shultina, right here. But we have videos showing how Russian DRGs, small groups, were bombed to oblivion with drones in this area, outskirts or in the suburban area of the city. I mean, one click from the city center and a few clicks away from the Russian main line, meaning Russian DRGs, let me switch the color so it makes more sense. Small groups have infiltrated through all of this area, and now they are being eliminated in this area. Now, again, you hear eliminated. Okay, we're fine. No, the areas where Russian DRGs are being eliminated could be considered where they have reached, because they are always there, always eliminated, always there, and suddenly they will be in the city center. So this line here doesn't represent where the fighting happens at all. The closer, more realistic line would be something like this. And now again, forgive me for this very messy drawing, and it's simplifying a lot of stuff. There are other channels who do it so much better. You can go and watch them also. Yeah, so again, to summarize it, Russians are in the southern eastern parts of Konstantynyvka, quite close to the city center. This is where the fighting is happening. I will very briefly go over Kupiansk, since, again, I don't focus on this much, but Kupiansk city center has Russian DRGs. They are very slowly worming into this city. About 1 month ago, Kupiansk urbanized areas didn't have any Russian units in it. Now they do, and as you can see, they have close to the city center. There is a Ukrainian cauldron forming, meaning Ukrainian troops face being trapped in the city itself. Situation is catastrophic. This is the word I would use. And the final area with a lot of bad news I have talked about a little bit is the Dnipropetrovsk advancement of the Russians. I will go back in time so you can see how this area changes. Talking about this area right here, and now I go forward in time. The issue is, Ukrainians do not have an answer to this. They don't have units fully equipped and rested to be sent here. They don't have reserves to be sent here. There is no answer to this. You might think, oh, they're advancing, send something here. There's nobody to send. That's the issue. There's no reserve units to be sent. There are no new units being formed, because Ukrainians do face a massive manpower shortage. They have men in the country, but the government and Zelensky have decided not to include them. If you're 25 or younger, you cannot be forcibly mobilized into the army. That's the law in Ukraine. So they have hundreds of thousands of 25 and younger men in the country which have not been used. And there's a reason for that. I will not go into it now. But for now, Ukrainian government has decided to take this hit. They don't mobilize these young men, and they are losing this territory I just mentioned. Okay, I will switch a little bit now. These forward positions I showed to you in Kupiansk, in Konstantynyvka, where Russian DRGs, these small infiltration groups, have been found a click or two ahead of the main line. Now, I have a Russian blogger, Alexander Karchenko here, who describes how Russian army supplies them. They don't do that with electric scooters or motorcycles. They don't do that via ground routes. They do it with small drones who drop food. Let me read it to you. The constant presence of drones has fundamentally changed the nature of the war in Ukraine. According to Russian war blogger Alexander Karchenko, the only way to survive is to stay underground, and it can take days to travel just a few kilometers. Today, guys often move forward too far, and supplying them by land becomes impossible. Neither buggies, motorcycles, nor even robotic carts can deliver food, water, and batteries to the fighters. But even such difficulties are no reason to retreat from positions. Supply is entrusted to drones, Mavics, FPV drones, and other birds. They drop food and medicine to the frontline positions because the Russian Baba Yaga appears on the front in homeopathic doses, meaning Baba Yaga in Russian sites, they don't produce them as much as the Ukrainians, but here you can see a small FPV or a civilian Mavic or DJI drone. They can carry this stuff. So yeah, this is 1 day's, this is 2 days of rations for the Russian frontline Storm Z soldier. And yeah, this is how they supply their frontal units who move very far from the main line, as we could see in Konstantynyvka and Kupiansk. I've been talking about the truth in this video for quite some time, and connected to this, as you can see, I'm very open to criticism. If anybody has this about me, I am open to change and doing these changes according to what you need to see or hear, because I have a specific focus on my channel, and if that focus excludes some information you want to see, I can change that. But I wrote a book, and I could say every truth I know and understand about Ukraine is in this book. 8 missions to Ukraine. You funded them, you donated and made these missions possible. So this is a book about what you have made possible. Go and get it. Link is in the description below. And as always, my friends, until my next video, which will be on Monday, Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.